Sure.
Cool.
What up, everybody? We are here with the Best of Show 2025 winner and the best Gargoyle Gecko and the best red base and Cappuccino. Bro, I almost forgot. You're four-time
I
champ.
got four.
You
That's
got
right.
four. I was about to give you only three.
Make sure we keep all four.
So this is Jordan from Ruby Reptiles, and Jordan breeds some incredible animals, not just cresteds and gargles. You also dabble in bearded dragons and hognose, right? So you got
Euromastics as well.
your Amastics now
We're
too.
diversified. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome. So welcome. I wanted to talk to you because obviously you produce some of the most spectacular animals in the world right now, as far as crested geckos and gargoyle geckos. So we wanted to get you on, pick your brain a little bit about what you got going on at Ruby Reptiles, and yeah, man. So I just wanted to ask you before we got started. Actually, I wanted to ask you which one of, because you made a comment before we left on Flora Fauna, and I just wanted to know
Yeah.
which one of the geckos that you entered were you like, this one's definitely winning, and then which one were you like, I don't know, that one might be a little bit stiffer competition.
I think the gargoyle. I for sure knew the gargoyle was going to win.
Yeah,
Mostly
yeah,
because the only other person I thought was going to, enter one was Brian, but I don't
yeah,
think he did because he was judging. So it
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
made that one easy. The one I
yeah,
thought for sure wasn't going to win was just the red base lily white. I
and
don't get me wrong, it's a nice gecko. I love the color red and I love lilies, but I didn't think that that was going to be like runner up
yeah,
basically.
yeah, and it's funny because the that was the gecko that scored the crested gecko that scored the highest. So you got best of show Gargoyle Gecko, and then technically you got best of show Crested Gecko as well. And some people might see that gecko and say, I don't get it. But what I'm trying to tell everybody is that it's not just about the color and the pattern.
Yeah,
That's
it's
just
the
two
structure.
that's just two aspects of the whole judging system. We judge on tail, body structure, eyes, crests, head structure, so many other factors. So unless if you only hit the pattern factor, or if you only hit
Yeah,
the color factor, you're not necessarily going to win. You might have the best colored gecko, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. So it's just
absolutely.
funny. It's funny that you told me that when we at Flora Fauna, because I was like, you know what? I mean, I think there's definitely other geckos there that are flashier, but when you
Yeah,
start to like look at them closely, Polaris, the red base lily white, was like, it's a solid gecko, bro.
yeah.
And I'm sure that's why you decided to bring them too.
I've been holding him back for a long time. Both of his parents were structurally speaking absolutely solid as well, and that was one of those animals where it's like you pair two parents together and the baby absolutely just outdoes both of them, and that's the one that you
Yeah.
decide to keep and use for future breeding.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to like just ingrain in people's minds is that you have to look beyond just the color and the pattern, because so many breeders, especially newer breeders, are looking at, they'll sacrifice on size, they'll sacrifice on structure, they'll sacrifice on a lot of things,
Yeah,
on health, before, as long as the gecko has great color and pattern. That's not how it should be. So I
yeah.
wanted to, I wanted to I wanted to let people hear that, because I thought that was really interesting. Um, and especially if you're looking at it at a very superficial level, you might think like, wow, that was the best, scored crested gecko,
Funny
but it
enough,
was.
I was just looking for something red to kind of throw into the category. Our
Yeah.
main thing has always been red, and I'm like, I've entered into two other categories. I have to enter into red, so I got to find something. And I was just going through breeders, and like,
Yeah.
this male is freaking huge. He's got a big
Yeah.
head, big
Yes.
head, nice long tail, and I mean the tail base on that guy.
Oh
He's probably
yeah.
like 80 grams, 75 grams. He's a big boy, and he's not
Yeah.
fat either.
Yeah, no, he's lean. He's lean and mean. That was one of Brian from Altitude. He was one of our judges, and that was one of his comments. Is like, man, this gecko's a tank. Like, out of all the
Yeah,
geckos, this one has the thickest tail. Like, it was just so robust, and obviously not a fat gecko. It was just like picture perfect. Um, and then also, obviously, we'll leave Carnage to the end. But one of my favorite geckos that you brought was Tiger Queen. One of my favorite geckos at the show was Tiger Queen, because you usually don't see cappuccinos with that nice head structure, and
Yeah.
the pattern on her is incredible as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, so tell us about Tiger Queen, dude.
So Tiger Queen, I actually wanted to enter last year in Flora
Yeah,
Fauna, but I think the requirements they have to be 18 months old, right? And last
yeah,
year she was like my best holdback of the year out of all of my cappuccinos, but she was only like 6 or 7 months old. So I
yeah,
was a little bummed out that I couldn't enter her last year because obviously caps when they're younger, the orange hasn't kind of faded to that brown. So her pattern when she was, 9 months
yeah,
younger was crazy. Popped way more, but she kept all the pattern. And this year, I figured I'd bring her, and yeah,
yeah.
she's probably my favorite cap overall, just based on the pattern. The fact that she has the tigering from like head to tail is incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just like it's hard to find a cappuccino that like really hits on so many different factors. And this
Yeah,
one's pattern. I mean, color, like you mentioned, the cappuccinos in general just tend to fade those orange markings.
yeah,
But you could tell. I mean, the color was there. She had a nice dark base, and the crest was my favorite thing about her, especially her being a cappuccino. It's just like nice, wide, even crest, nice
yep.
spikes on her,
Nice
and
big head.
yeah, and then most of the cappuccinos I see out here, and even most of the ones I have are just not there yet. We still gotta breed them up to that level of having those bigger crests.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
my first generation cappuccinos were not good. They were bald. I don't know if they were hatching fast or what it was, but it was kind of early in, and man, they had no crests. And thankfully you can kind of fix that within a generation or two.
Oh
You
yeah,
pair
yeah.
to big stuff and you instantly start getting big heads and a lot more crests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a symptom of it being a wholesale gecko for the most part,
Yeah,
and then when everybody caught on to the cappuccinos, they were still very, very rudimentary. So we're working our way back, up. And a lot of the guys
exactly.
in Korea have been 2 or 3 steps ahead of us. But for whatever reason, the guys
Yeah.
in Korea, if I have any criticism for them, is that they don't seem to focus on the crest as much as we do here in the United States.
I think it depends. Kind of like anywhere else, they've got some amazing breeders over there. They've got some
Yeah, yeah,
breeders
yeah,
that are not so amazing.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, I don't know. I've seen a nice variety for sure. I'd say the big thing that they focus on is white. It seems like
yeah,
that's kind of unanimous across the board as all Korean breeders love white, and that seems to be
yeah.
the biggest thing that's pushed.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, I got to bring him up. My favorite gecko of the show was Carnage. I mean, I love gargoyle geckos, but
You're basically a grandpa. That's your
yeah, right.
grandson.
There you go. Now people are gonna say that's why it won. That's the only reason. No, that gecko is badass, and everybody that walked through those doors and saw that gecko was like, oh, like that might just take the whole fucking show.
Yeah,
So
I had actually showed him off. Funny enough, a show that I did a weekend beforehand. It was the first show that I've ever taken Carnage to, and I just kind of threw him on the table just to show him off to people. That whole show, bro, both days, all day long. It was like, hey, how much is this? Can I buy this?
yeah,
And I'm like, no, 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 it's not for sale. And they're like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
well, when are his babies for sale? Like, people love Carnage. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's such an incredible animal from all, you know, aspects. Like the build. Of course, he's not fully grown yet. He's still gonna fill
Yeah,
out a little bit more. So I'm sure even if you were to bring him next year or something, he would probably score higher just because he would fill out
probably.
more.
Yeah,
But
once it gets their
his
size.
his color, his pattern, like his temperament too was great, which is something that we judge on because I looked at it this way. I'm like, at the end of the day, we breed these animals to be pets. And when you look at the dog shows and all these other shows that judge animals, they all look at temperament. So if
Yeah,
you have a dog and the dog is not doing what it's supposed to, or God forbid it bites someone or something like that, that
yeah,
dog's getting disqualified. Now, if,
absolutely.
if a gecko bites one of the judges, we're not going to disqualify you, but it's probably
But he's
not going to
getting
score.
knocked down some points for sure.
Exactly, exactly. So that's why we decide to look at the temperament of the animal. I think it's important when we're considering that we breed these for the pet trade. We
Yeah.
we breed them. We want them to be as beautiful as possible, but a lot of of what we do is geared towards people being able to keep these animals and enjoy them as pets. So that's why we do
Absolutely.
that.
You don't want to be breeding gargoyles either that are biting people nonstop.
Jerks. Yeah, and
you
the
won't you
gargoyles.
won't have any kids that like gargoyles if that's the case.
Yeah, and the gargoyles will draw some blood. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now before we get onto the interview, I do want to mention some of our sponsors. I just want to give a huge shout out to ZooMed. They make the best products in the industry, bar none. PalmStreet, we've been killing it on PalmStreet, and most of these, you know, uh, breeders that are going onto PalmStreet are all saying the same. And of course, Pangea. Pangea makes some of the most, well versed diet in the game, and I think every breeder I know feeds Pangea to some degree. So huge
Us
shout out
included.
to them.
Yeah, I think
Um,
everyone pretty much uses Pangea to some degree.
yeah. We personally we like to do a lot of variety, so we'll feed
Yeah.
all the fig. The gargles tend to love the fig, by the way. I don't know if it's just my gargles or what, but
Fig
gargles
and
destroy the
watermelon are
fig.
probably my two like most eaten flavors.
Yeah. Great stuff from them. Jordan, now I wanna turn back the clock a little bit. Do you remember the first time you had a gargoyle or a crested gecko in your hands? Like, when was that key moment that you saw them for the first time and you were like, "Oh shit, like this is awesome." Do you remember that?
Funny enough, I had actually purchased a gecko before I had held a gecko.
You know
Um,
what? I had Tara on not too long ago and she said the same exact thing. That's wild.
yeah,
So,
I had I like anyone else, you walk through PetSmart or Petco and you always see them in the cage and you're like, oh, that cute little thing down in the corner, but they never have like big full sized ones, so I didn't really know
yeah.
what to expect there. But once I saw them, I started researching them on YouTube. You're one of the first people who pops up, so I was binging you and Manny's videos and
Nice.
Altitude. I watched a lot of Altitude videos too, and he was actually I think the first person I purchased from, and that was one of those like holy cow moments. You open up the box and you're like, wow, this thing looks even crazier in person, and the second you touch it your mind's blown. You expect
Yeah.
it to feel rough, and that's one of the best things about going to shows too is seeing people's reaction the first time they touch them being just like
Yeah.
pretty smooth. But yeah,
Yeah.
I had never actually touched one before owning them. I just saw them and I was like, that's freaking cool. I already have bearded dragons. I know I'm good with reptiles, and the care kind of seemed a little bit easier, so figured why
Yeah.
not get a couple.
So I'm assuming you got the crested from him, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then when was the first time? Was it the same kind of story for the gargoyle gecko? You just saw them and you ordered one, and you just
Yeah, I had already kind of jumped off the deep end on the Cresteds, and
yeah,
I saw that they had the same care, except our thing's always been red, and so when I started seeing red striped gargs and red blotches, I was like, dang, those things are freaking cool. And I
yeah,
morph market and found one that had a nice complete stripe down the back, and I don't think I got that same wow factor as far as the feel from the gargoyles, but it
yeah.
was more of a wow off of the appearance because
Oh
they
yeah,
look amazing fired up and fired down. That doesn't really change, because the red's always like right there in your face.
yeah,
I think the cresteds feel a little bit better though, as far as like
yeah. And
satisfaction.
it's also like that first moment of touching a crested gecko. That's why I think everybody that goes through a reptile show, I think that, especially the ones that go through my table and I put a crested gecko on their hand and they've never even touched a reptile, it just
Mm-hmm.
like rewires their whole brain on like what
Yeah.
reptiles are supposed to feel like and look like and be, because nobody expects it to be that soft and it's kind of cute and
And
it
especially with them
bring,
being jumpy, like the average person's just like afraid of them. They see
yeah,
them and they're like, "Yo, don't let that jump on me." And the second they
yeah,
touch them, they're like, "Oh, okay, maybe it's not too bad."
yeah. Yeah, so gargoyle geckos, I feel like they're definitely, one of their names when they were first getting imported was Bumpy Gecko. So I'm assuming it
Because
was
of
more
just the horns.
mostly because of the horns, but they do have more of a bumpy like feeling, like a little bit not exactly sandpaper, but definitely rougher than
I
like a
kind of know what
crested
you mean.
gecko.
They're definitely a little more rough.
Yeah. So yeah, that's probably why you don't get that like crazy wow factor off of the gargles right off the
Yeah.
bat. But when you said you went off the deep end, you started acquiring a bunch of geckos and you already had bearded dragons. Were you At what point did you make the decision of like, okay, this is something cool, like I really enjoy this hobby, to like, oh no, this could be a full-blown business. I could make a living from this. Like, when did that transition happen? What was it that clicked in your mind that allowed that to happen?
Probably the first show I vended. I vended a Tucson Reptile Expo. It's a small town south of Phoenix. Not a crazy big show by any means, but it's the only one that's down there every year. So it gets
Yeah.
a good amount of foot traffic for sure. I had been breeding, I want to say, for about a year and a half, kind of just a hobby thing. Had like a variety of Dalmatians and brought them to the show. I think I maybe brought like 25, and I went home with like two geckos. And they were two
Wow.
geckos that I didn't bring. It was like I traded my last two geckos to somebody else and got a couple more. And at
Wow.
that point, I was like, okay, wow, I just sold basically everything I have for sale for the next year, like in one
Wow.
show. So I need to breed more. I need to get better stuff because at the time, I mean, my first couple of geckos, they weren't anything crazy. It was just some basic stuff just to kind of get your foot in the water. And after that, I was like, okay, let's start going a little bit not off the deep end, but investing a little bit more on each animal. Before if my budget was 500 on breeders, if I see okay, I can buy a breeder for 1500 and all of the babies are going to be worth more because they're all way nicer. You kind of start transitioning into that like business mindset rather than just I want to
Yeah.
collect them all like Pokemon cards.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
kind of everyone's initial thing. You see all the different colors, the different morphs, and you're just like, I want one of each.
Yep.
Not really any rhyme or reason. You're no project plans coordinated, nothing. You're just getting everything you can, and you're just like, wow. All right, now what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's how I started. That's how I still am. I can still see like new
I
stuff
know.
pop up, and I'm like, I need that. I need that. I need that.
You're like, I don't even know if I have a project for you, but you're cool, and I'll make
Yeah,
one.
exactly. I'll find room.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, so that's pretty good. Like in your first reptile show, you basically sold out.
And that
You know,
was, I want to say, right
is that
after COVID. It was
right after?
the fall after the lockdown. So
Oh wow.
surprisingly, that show had a lot of people. It was kind of a weird one because everyone was masking up. I don't know if they had started doing stimulus yet, but I mean, the geckos were going like crazy. It was
Yeah, they
also
did.
one of my first shows, so I probably kind of had them underpriced too, and maybe that was why. But I didn't have them on the table for $40. They were all like 100 to 200 animals, and
Yeah. That's a thing that those COVID years were like the golden years, I think. Like so many people made so much money during those years breeding geckos, it's insane. And
yeah,
I feel like that was like one of the big like spikes in breeders that we saw was during that time because a lot of people got into it and started breeding and so
and
on.
and not to like downplay anyone's work, but it was kind of easy money. Like you could
Yeah,
have mid-tier geckos, and as long as they were females, they would sell for ridiculous
yeah,
amounts.
yeah, yeah, you're
And you
right.
did. I remember at one point I had a handful of exanthic babies, and I'd have people reach out and they're like, "How many do you have?" I don't know, 8, but they're all like under 4 grams, and I don't want to sell them yet. And they're like, "Okay, I'll take them all for 60 grand," and you're just like, "What?"
Yeah,
It's yeah, the
yeah.
market was going crazy when they were just printing money
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. It's a little deceiving for some of those breeders that got into at that time because
right at the
in
peak.
it was at the peak, and in my opinion, those some of those geckos should have never been worth that much. Like
Yeah,
I remember one of the breeders down here in Florida that popped out Axanthics, like her own line and started producing lily white Axanthics and all these things. She was selling lily white Axanthics for $50,000 each.
I believe
And
it. And there were people that would pay it.
and there was people that would pay it no problem. And what was crazy is that I'm like, I mean, I've been around, like I've seen like a two cycles at least at this point where we see like the prices go crazy high and
And
come
then
back all
drop.
the way low and they come
Yeah.
back. It's a cycle. So I was thinking, I'm like, are these people like do they not understand what's about to happen? Like, I I don't know. I always
I,
thought like I'm like, oh man, I hope they're not like spending their like you know life savings on this because especially with crested geckos, you can produce crested geckos pretty easily, and a lot of people can produce crested geckos really
yeah.
easily. So,
Well, I think
but
everyone learned just how quick the market can kind of get pulled out from underneath you with the caps.
oh yeah,
That was a
yep.
day and night thing. The second the nostrils came out, it was like 1 second they're 12 grand each, and then the next week they're 200 each, and no one wants them.
Yep. I mean, it's just like stocks or anything else. It's like imagine
Yeah,
if tomorrow all iPhones start blowing up or something and killing people, like, dude, their stock's gonna
No one wants an
plummet and
iPhone.
nobody's gonna
Yeah.
want an iPhone anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. Now, Jordan, I know you mentioned your thing is the Reds. You love the Reds, but what do you think is your in your breeding program? What's your like your strongest like groups? Like if you say, I think out of all my geckos, I produce the best cappuccinos or the best Axanthics or best Reds or lily whites. What do you think is like your strong, your strongest point in your program?
Probably my cappuccinos.
You think the
My
caps?
cappuccinos, I definitely took the most time with is and the most time like picking breeders too. I was very careful about it. My first group, like I said, they all had spots. They all had really bad structure. So for the most part, when I saw their babies, they weren't what I wanted. I got a lot
To
of
the
pinstripes,
lychee,
but
to the bearded
everything was just,
dragons.
huh? Oh
Whatever,
my god,
whatever
no.
cappuccino had spots, bearded dragon food, right?
They would. I'm sure they would. But
Oh, they fucking would for sure.
oh yeah, they'll eat anything. But yeah, basically after I saw those babies though, and they had spots, I was like, I have to get rid of these. So I scrapped my original caps entirely,
Yeah,
and I kept a couple holdbacks. They all grew out. They had fine structure, but at that point, I ended up getting a frap from Kim Sanha Dino Market over in
yeah,
Korea. And
yeah.
once I got that frap, and it was a male, um, or it was produced by Kim, but I got it from Early Gecko, I believe. He
Okay.
held it for summer, and by the end of summer, it ended up being a male. And at that point, I went to Tinley in the fall, and I was just on the hunt for the nicest tricolors I could find. And I
Yeah.
grabbed some stuff from Chrissy. I got some stuff from Emily Burke. I got some stuff from Morph Menagerie, and just kind
Yeah.
of the best I could find on people's tables. And I took them to my frap and held the best out of the best. And now we're, I think, on our third generation of cap stuff out of those projects, like Tiger Queen. We have eggs due to
Yeah.
hatch from her here in about a month. Um,
Wow. Who did you pair her to?
it is a Caravaggio boy, um,
Okay. Ooh, I can't wait to
grandkid,
see the
I
structure
guess.
on those.
Oh, dude, the male. I have him on my Instagram. His name is Aftermath. I
Okay.
took a Caravaggio kid from Morph Menagerie and I paired it with a really high white girl that I got from Kevin at Fireside.
Yeah.
And basically, the best baby out of both of them, between pattern and white coverage and structure, you name it, that was the one that I grew out and I paired to Tiger Queen. So I
Ooh.
think it should definitely inject some white in there. It'll keep the pattern going, and I'm hoping the babies are kind of just her little mini me's.
Insane. Oh yeah, I bet they will, dude. That's exciting. I can't wait to see those.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited.
now I know you recently got into the chochos, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about the chochos. I know they're still fairly new in the United States. I'm not even sure if anybody else aside from you and another guy that I think there's only two breeders in the States that have them,
I think
correct?
IB Exotic has some. I don't know if he
Yeah,
has visual chochos breeding. I think he
but
has het pairs, but I know he's
yeah,
produced one for sure.
okay. So yeah, it's it's very very rare in the United States. The chochos I seen Sunju produce. I think he's the one who originally started producing them, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And for those of you that aren't aware of them, they basically look like super red tangerine type sable to me. That's how I describe them. How would
Kind of.
you
Yeah.
how would you describe them since you've been breeding them and stuff?
So when they all hatch out, they hatch out like a maroon color with a lot of tangerine on them.
Yeah.
They fire down like this light gray. The tangerine kind of goes to more like a pinkish tone.
Okay.
When they fire up, they're that maroon color. As they age, though, they go through a few different like color cycles where it kind of changes. They go through a phase where the red is almost completely gone, and they almost look more kind of sable like you were saying. And then as they get older, they darken up a bit, and that red overlay kind of comes back in, along with the tangerine pigment. And that's kind of their final stage. So you can get a lot of white on them, you can get a lot of tangerine. But as far as the babies we've seen so far, they hatch out with a lot of variation. We
Yeah.
hatched a phantom 2 days ago actually, and it was the last 50% pos het that I hadn't proven out yet, and she just proved out. So I'm 3 for 3. All 50% pos hets proved out for me. And
Wow.
the phantom that popped out though has no tangerine. But as you've seen from that lily white I had pop out just a couple weeks ago, I mean the tangerine on that's it's got so much tangerine, it's like blood red. It's crazy.
So with the phantom, the way you know it's chocho is because of the tail. like the tangerine
No,
type
it
stuff?
it still has that same color. Like it still has that
Oh,
maroon color across the whole body.
gotcha,
It's just it really doesn't have a whole lot of pattern. Like it really just zipped out the
gotcha.
pattern. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, so what do you think, like, what's your plan with them? What do you see them in 5 to 10 years? Where do you think you could go with that particular gene?
It honestly just depends on how it starts reacting with things.
Yeah,
Sunju
it's still
posted a
so
picture.
new.
Exactly. Sunju posted a picture with a cap mixed in with it, and he pretty much told me like, make sure you do it. It's worth doing for sure. He said the color is just way more enhanced right out of the egg. It's like stronger and more vibrant. So I'm definitely mixing in cap. My goal is to get sable in. That's what I'm ultimately working on. Um, I don't think Xanthic's going to do too much, but I still have Xanthic eggs. I'm going to have some double het Chocho Xanthics, and I'm kind of expanding it into two different lineages of Xanthics so that I can take them back to each other and not have
Gotcha.
too much line breeding going on there. But yeah, I'm kind of just mixing it with everything, different color bases, different
Yeah.
patterns. I know white's going to look good. Obviously, white looks good on everything. So I'm kind of trying to go a few other avenues and explore those before I just go to the no brainer.
Right. Yeah, I think that's because it's so new, it's going to take some time to figure out, which way, it's going to look the best. But I'm excited
Yeah,
about it. I think it's so funny because, man, I've been into Crested Gecko so long, and then in the last freaking handful of years, just
it's
like
just
one after
exploding.
another, just like new gene after another, boom, boom, boom,
Can't keep
like
up.
that. Yeah, it's crazy. So I'm still not. And you said it's a recessive, right? You said it's a
Yeah,
recessive mutation.
yeah.
So yeah, that gives me a little bit more um like hope with them, because now I'm like, okay, well, it's not as easy to reproduce as like sables or cappuccinos, so it's gonna hold its
Exactly.
it's gonna hold its value better. And then it's gonna weed out a lot of those breeders that are kind of like, just doing it for the money. Like, if you want to produce some nice high-end chochos, it's gonna take you a handful of years,
Oh
at
yeah,
least
yeah. You're
at,
you're gonna
at
have to be
least two
dedicated to the
generations.
project for sure.
Yeah, so that makes me feel better about them, which is, I can't
That
wait
was
to
kind of my peace of mind because I watched Caps and Sables both do the same thing, where you're buying breeders for thousands of dollars, and within a very short amount of time, they're 10 times cheaper than when you were initially purchasing. I think
yeah,
Chochos are definitely like anything else; they're going to go down in price, but with it being
yeah,
recessive, it's going to make it hard. The other thing too is the lineage is not very diverse. Um, Sunju was the first person to pop them out back in like 2020 or 2021. And
yeah,
I was up his butt the second I saw him pop out. I thought they were the coolest thing. And he told me, "Hey man, reach out in like 3 years. I'm not selling anything to anybody anytime soon." So I kind
yeah.
of just kept following up with him and seeing like when he was going to release something basically. And from what he's explained to me, there was a shipment that came from the U.S. into Korea. So the Chochos originated from someone in the U.S. And in that box, it was a bunch of high-end tricolors. And he said those tricolors likely came from like line bred tricolors, so they're already kind of inbred to begin with. And when he popped out the first Chocho, he basically turned around and paired it back, I assume, to the parents to try and prove it out. It's what anybody in that situation would likely do. And he said a lot of the eggs just failed and they didn't do very well. He has an article actually written up. It's in Korean, so you have to translate it. But basically, from there, he spent 3 years just outcrossing, going to other stuff, and kind of diversifying the bloodlines and trying to take stuff back. So there are other people that have chochos, and there are other people that are selling them, and they're advertising them as unrelated, which I think is just ignorance more than anything. Assuming a recessive that's recent is unrelated is extremely unlikely.
Right, right.
Especially if
Yeah,
it's out of the same box. A different
yeah.
breeder right around the same time as that shipment happens to pop it out at the same time. Their bloodline is a direct sibling.
Right, yeah. It's gonna take some time before you could, diversify it more.
At least a few
But
generations.
yeah, which, it's part of what we do as reptile breeders. That's also another reason why I think it's important for people with the gold standard and everything that I've been putting on. It's like, I want to get people to understand a little bit more that your decisions today will affect the animals 10 years from
Exactly.
now. So, because you see it, with dogs and stuff, and like, I always shit on pugs and stuff, but it's like, it if you look at genetically and like physically, that animal's a disaster. Now, if you have a pug, I don't hate you or anything, but it's like I don't want that to happen with the geckos, right?
Yeah.
So um yeah, it's just like we got to start making decisions today and start looking at these things with a fine tooth comb, so we don't end up in a genetic disaster later on, because it could happen
Absolutely.
very easily. All it takes is, like with the caps, like if people, and there's still people out there that don't care and produce super caps or want to keep breeding them, and it's like, well, I mean, you're just like going down. You're not gonna dig yourself out of that hole.
Yeah.
It might do good, decent for a couple years, but eventually everything starts falling apart.
Yep.
So it's something to keep in mind. Um,
Yeah.
now, Jordan, you being, obviously one of the top breeders, with everything you produce, you've invested so much into your collections. What are your like non-negotiables when you're holding stuff back or when you're looking to buy a gecko? Is it like, I don't know, a gecko can't be like, let's say it's an adult, it can't be under 40 grams, or what? Like, what do you look at? What is your non-negotiables when you're buying a gecko or you're keeping holdbacks?
First and foremost is structure. Um, I think color is something that you can easily get in just about any gecko by breeding the right things to it.
Yeah.
Structure, yes, you can fix in a generation, generally speaking, but I think it's easier to start from a good point than it is to start from a bad one.
Yeah.
If you're starting with animals that have arrow-shaped heads and no crests, like even 2 generations in, the shape of their skull isn't going to necessarily be what you want, even though it has plenty of crests, you know? So
Yeah.
I think structure is definitely a big one. At this point, though, I mean, I don't have any breeders that really have horrible structure. I want if
Right.
it's lacking crest, I won't breed it. If its head's a little bit skinnier, I'll make sure I pair it to something fat to kind of compensate. I won't say that's necessarily like a deal breaker, but it's something to where when I am looking at babies, like I want a nice big head.
Yeah.
I want bigger cresteds as a whole. I have a couple larger animals that are like mid 80s. I'd love
Mm.
most of my
Wow.
cresteds to be in that range if possible, as long
Yeah.
as they're not fat. I don't want a bunch of obese geckos, but I think
Right.
large geckos would be great. That's one of the things I liked about gargoyles is the fact that they get a little bit bigger body.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that is the easiest to sacrifice when it comes to like selective breeding or line breeding or any of this stuff, is the
Yeah,
size. Because I mean, I've seen it personally with gargoyle geckos. It's like I have geckos from so many different bloodlines. I'm like a hoarder of gargoyle gecko bloodlines for my reds, because
you probably have the most diverse gargoyle collection
I
in
I
the country easily.
I I truly believe so, and I'm like, because I buy from everybody. I don't care if you're a big breeder or small breeder, as long as the gecko looks good and functional and whatever. Even if the color's not like top tier, I'll sacrifice for the color a little bit to get new blood and good structure and all that. But anyways,
Yeah,
so when when um when I'm looking at these geckos, I want to make sure that you know you can't just focus on like gargles, like you said. It's one of those things that you like. One of the best things about them is their size, and the brightest reds gargles sometimes are like the smallest ones for whatever reason. And
yeah,
I see people like sacrifice on the size and say, well, I'm just going to breed it into that program. And then that, if you extrapolate and you multiply that by 10, 15, 20 breeders, and now all those breeders are breeding the best reds, but they all have kind of like those small genetics in there, like down
yeah,
the line, the animal, instead of being an 80-gram animal, is going to be a 40-gram animal as a 5-year-old adult.
yeah,
So it's one of those things that I know it's such a hard decision to make, especially when you hatch out your best gecko and it just happens to be small. But
yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I'll be like, damn, like I would, if this wasn't, this is such a nice animal, but it's not like I can't keep this and breed it. I'm like,
It's
so
not
I,
worth it.
yeah, it's like for
Yeah,
me. So I'm like, I can't, I gotta sell it or whatever. Or sometimes I'll hatch on the opposite end. I'll hatch out a beast gecko that right out of the egg is massive and it looks great. And I'm like, the color's not like crazy, but I'm like, not
yeah,
I want to, this thing's like outgrowing everything, and like I want that
yeah.
in my
But
breeding
you can
program.
add to it. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's something important for people to keep in mind. Um, now, now, if I had to give you like a scale, right? And I was like, okay, rate the level of importance between color, pattern, structure, and temperament. Just those four things. Out of those four things, and for structure, you could include like, overall body and head and all that. So out of those four things, put them from one most important to four the least important. Still important, but least important.
Yeah. I definitely put structure first. I
Hmm.
think pattern I'd probably put third. So we'll go color second. Main
Okay.
reason is you can have color that's dirty and you can have color that's clean, as you know. And obviously, clean bases are going to kind of translate to more clean bases. And I think even if you have a lot of pattern, you'll have babies pop out of high pattern pairs that have no pattern at all.
Yeah.
And that kind of variation, I don't know if you should really prioritize it. I think the pattern is kind of like the cherry on the top of the cake. If everything else, if you got
Yeah.
all 9 out of 10 boxes checked, if you can check the pattern box too, that's a perfect gecko.
Yeah, and
Um,
and the thing about the pattern is like the pattern's so variable.
yeah,
So like the color, that particular color is going to be passed down more often than that particular pattern. So the
exactly.
pattern can be scattered all over the place depending on
Yep.
what you breed it to and what other genes and traits are in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then I
So
take
yeah.
temperament fourth for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, you want good temperaments, but you're gonna get a couple crackhead males in there.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. I know. Trust me, I know. And that's one of those things too that for a long time, I mean, I could care less if the gecko bites me or the gecko's skittish. Like I care less. But
Yeah,
it's one of those things that I'm like forcing myself to think about
prioritize.
more. It's not gonna make it or break it for me. Like I'm not gonna say, oh, I'm not breeding this gecko because it's batshit crazy. But I will be like, damn, like it's not in my mind at least, you know.
Yeah.
So and I
That's the
think,
hard part too, is those males that are batshit crazy are sometimes the best breeders. Those are
yeah,
the ones you throw in with a female and they like jump across the cage for them immediately because they're just ready.
yeah, 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 exactly. Now, okay, so now I wanted to talk to you because obviously we've been talking geckos, but I freaking love bearded dragons. And one day, I don't know when, but one day, I would like to do kind of like the same thing with the Gold Standard Gecko Club, but have something similar to bearded dragons. So if I said
Okay.
this and now someone beats me to it, whatever, I'll own up to
Hey,
it. But
you're putting it out there though.
yeah, but whatever. But bearded dragons is one of the biggest lizard, like one of the most evident lizards that I could see. Like I see wild bearded dragons, and then I see some of the bearded dragons that have been bred in captivity, and I'm like, damn, we're like already there. Like this is already a
Yeah.
fucking train wreck, you know.
Yeah.
So I like to speak to bearded dragon breeders because my first reptile ever was a bearded dragon. So I have a special spot in them, like, for them in my
Same here,
heart.
funny enough.
Yeah, I mean they're a fucking hard. They're not an easy animal to keep.
No, whoever said they're beginner reptiles lied.
That was the first person trying to sell them.
Yep. That's the go-to. Oh, they're super easy. It's not that bad. And then you realize
They're
the cage, the amount of food they eat, the
Oh
lighting
my gosh.
requirements. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean they're hard to kill, but they're definitely not easy. Like
Yeah.
when you have a crested gecko, that's easy. When you have a corn
Yeah.
snake, that's easy.
That's
Freaking
what made
bearded
me fall
dragon.
in love with geckos, funny enough, is I had like 30 bearded dragons and I'm used to like
Oh my
I gotta
god.
feed these things crickets 3 times a day. Their
Yeah.
poops are massive and they stink, and you get a gecko and it's this derpy little thing smaller than your hand and its poop is the size of a tic tac. You
And
gotta
you don't
feed
gotta
it two
feed
or
it.
three times a week.
Yeah.
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 Complete difference.
Trust me, I hear you. But so what I was gonna ask you is like, what is your? Have you started to think about all these things like that we talk about with the geckos now with the gold standard, like the structure and overall and temperament. I think temperament for bearded dragons is honestly more important than it is for
Yes,
geckos.
absolutely.
Um, but so what like tell me, like, do you think is that something that you started to think about recently? Is that something that when in the beginning you didn't really care about? You just wanted the best looking stuff? Tell me about your bearded dragons.
When I first got into bearded dragons, I wasn't breeding anything at the time, so I didn't really value the structure like I do now. For sure,
Hmm.
then my priority was color. Like you could take something with shitty structure and mix it with something that's got amazing color, and it would still at least like look nice, right? But once you
Yeah.
kind of get into bearded dragons and you start peeling back the layers of that onion, you realize like genetically they're pretty messed up. They've been around for a long time and they haven't had any new blood since like the 90s, I think, from Australia. So
Yeah.
the bottleneck is pretty severe. And once you start breeding and you get to know people in the community, you really start to learn the value of that, especially with certain genes. I mean, translucents have been around forever, and you still can't do a translucent to translucent. I
Yeah.
don't even personally do trans to het trans just because you will run into more issues that way. If you do that for a
Yeah.
couple generations, you'll start having kink tails and dwarfs and all kinds of things like that. So working with them before geckos definitely helped me out because it kind of gave me that mindset. Like you were saying with like smaller animals, it might have perfect color, but there have been plenty of bearded dragons where I have a female that just doesn't meet my like length and weight requirements for breeding, and I know she'll never get to that size. You know, she's 3 years old and she weighs 200 grams, and she's like half the size of a normal adult. And it's
Yeah.
like it's crappy, but you have to because otherwise, a you're going to risk her health trying to breed her, but also if you do get eggs out of her, I mean, are her
Babies.
babies going to be normal size or are they going to be small like she is? You're just going to kind of perpetually make it worse for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. You make the because the eggs are going to be smaller, so the babies are going to be smaller.
Yep.
And sometimes you get, animals that hatch out small and it's not necessarily genetic, but let's
Hmm.
say it is a female, and then, because it is a female, whatever eggs she puts, they're going to be smaller than a regular size female.
Yeah.
And the animals are just going to be smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yep.
So it is something to think about. Now, what do you like when you're looking at a bearded dragon? You're like, okay, well, I want my bearded dragon to be at least how big, like how many grams, and like
For a
what
breeding
would you say?
female, my rule of thumb is generally no less than 350 grams.
Gotcha.
If you go over like 450, your animal's probably a little on the fat side. There's like
Yeah.
a sweet spot where you can kind of breed them. You want them to be lean, but not too lean to where when they lay eggs, they're going to be malnourished. Because
Yeah.
when they lay eggs, I mean, I'm sure you've
Oh
seen it.
yeah.
They lose
Yeah.
like a third of their body weight, and they look
They're
like they are
crazy.
not doing so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to find that balance in there and make sure you're giving them water and food the second they lay and kind of fattening them up. But 350 seems to be the sweet spot where you can do that and not really have any issues.
Yeah. Dude, you're like taking me back. Like bearded dragons, I bred them, but like one time, and I'm like, I'm not like this is
This isn't for me.
this isn't for me. It's just like I love them, but I'm
Yeah.
like I could just buy them so cheap wholesale, and
Yeah.
I'm like it's not, my heart's not in it
Yeah.
to produce like high quality bearded dragons at this point. Even though I do want to have like a pair just for fun,
Yeah.
like but I'm not there at this
I've,
point just because
don't get
I'm
me
so
wrong.
busy.
I've kind of gone towards that direction as time goes
Yeah.
on. It's hard, especially with all the other species and whatnot that I work with now. The time commitment. I have to have like a full time employee just for my dragons, whereas I
Oh
can
yeah.
easily handle all of my other animals myself. That's just
Yeah.
like dragons are the most demanding. So for them to say that they're beginner reptiles is absolutely crazy. I would
Exactly.
consider a hognose, Euromastics are hard. I would consider this more of a freaking beginner reptile
Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
they're simple. They don't. I mean, they stress out, but like the feeding requirement isn't as high.
It's not as crazy, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You're right. I would actually put a Euromastics over a bearded dragons for a new person because,
yeah,
I mean, just like
and
it's
they're
like the
still super
craziest
friendly.
thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and now I one more bearded dragon question for the people that like geckos. Now the red monsters.
Yeah,
So red monsters came and they just like got so popular overnight. It feels like they're
yeah,
like one of the craziest new. It's like it brought some fresh like blood into bearded dragons as far as like new people coming into and being interested in bearded dragons and
for
breeding
sure.
them again. And I wanted to ask you, so from my understanding, it's like a line bred thing, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
a
an
bloodline.
actual, it's a bloodline.
Yeah,
So, okay, so what is it, what makes it a, what's it called again?
red monster.
A red monster. Like, what makes it a red monster? Just being super dark red? Like, what is there
It's
anything in
a
particular?
it's a lineage thing. So back in 2020, 2021, there was a guy in China. I was actually like ground zero with that one. I was the first person to import red monsters into the US.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, there were none here before. There was a guy in China. His name was Freeman Lamb
Yeah.
at Red Beardy's lab, and he started posting some crazy looking bearded dragons. I had red dragons. I had Spanish reds, German reds, American reds, you name it. But then he posted these, and I'm like, those are different. I've never seen a red like that before.
Chinese reds.
Exactly. Like, oh man, they were crazy looking. But the price tag was right there with them. They were
Yeah.
5,000 a piece, I believe, at the time, and
Wow.
I was crazy, and I I went for it. So I got a pair, and when I saw them in person, I was like, "Holy cow, these are amazing!" Unfortunately, we had a little mishap with the first one I got. They sent him over from Hong Kong. It's a 16-hour flight to LA, and customs forgot to take him off the plane. So
Oh
that
my
plane
God.
turned around and went right back to Hong Kong for another 16-hour flight. And then they turned around and they sent it right back to the US again on another 16-hour flight. So I had an animal that had been on a plane for over 2 days, and the breeder had only sent it. He was like a 10-gram little 6-week-old baby dragon.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, and he looked absolutely incredible, but I brought him home. He wouldn't really eat, and after like 2 months, he ended up passing. I was completely
Yeah.
devastated, and I reached out to him, and thankfully, the dude was like, "Hey, completely understand because of the whole plane mishap. I'm going to send you a replacement."
Wow.
And the replacement I ended up getting actually was like my founding male that kind of started everything for me. His name was Titan. He was a leatherback. He was borderline purple. He was incredible, and
Yeah.
I started breeding them. And when you do red monster to red monster, you kind of gamble. Most of the time they come out healthy, but you do have a higher instance of like dwarfs and things like that. You can just tell that there's an inbreeding kind of issue going on.
Yeah.
And once people started seeing that, they started outcrossing them. So now you have things like 50% red monsters, 75% red monsters, or like high content red monsters, which would be anything that's more than like 3/4. And
Yeah.
that's just people outcrossing them to other red things to kind of strengthen it and diversify the blood a little bit. But you're still trying to keep that like dark red in there, if that
Right.
makes sense. Because
Yeah.
the thing that really makes red monsters different is just like they have the purplish, darkish color like all over their head, and it kind of just as they get older translates and goes across the whole body and makes them darker basically. Um, but we're like 4 or 5 generations in on ours now. We don't breed any pure red monsters anymore just because of the inbreeding issues that kind of pop up there. But we breed 3/4 reds to pures or half reds to pures and make 3/4. And the 3/4 red monsters look pretty much the same. The only difference is out of a clutch with like 20 eggs, rather than all 20 babies looking absolutely amazing, it's like 15 look amazing. And then you'll have five that are kind of eh.
Yeah. Which is
But
still pretty good. I mean,
oh, that's
more,
great.
bearded dragons lay a crap ton of eggs, so
Yeah.
you got a lot more to play with. So
That was the other thing. My first red monster female laid 8 clutches for me. Her first season.
eight.
Eight. 8 clutches.
Wow.
So the first five were fertile.
Wow.
Half of the fifth clutch, and these were all like 30 egg clutches. She laid over 200 eggs for me her first season. It it destroyed her. I'm not gonna lie. I did not breed her
Yeah.
after
No.
that. She was
Yeah.
she lived for a couple more years, but she had like a kinked tail and was all jacked up from like she just kept going. But half
Yeah.
of her fifth clutch was infertile, and at that point, I was like, "Cool." She used all of her retained sperm. She's not going to lay anymore. And then here came a sixth infertile clutch, a seventh infertile
Um.
clutch, an eighth infertile clutch. I'm over here like, "Please stop laying. You're going to kill yourself."
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's what.
yeah,
That's rough. That's the thing about dragons and most other lizards that aren't geckos is like chameleons. A lot of agamids. Like, man, laying eggs. They don't lay two eggs. They lay a
yeah,
shit ton of eggs, and it takes a big toll on them.
yeah.
So it's like one of those things, like especially with chameleons, is like females will live maybe 4 or 5 years, but if you breed them, good luck getting 3 or 4 years out of them. Like
Really?
it takes a big toll on them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
so we're
tough.
lucky with geckos, man. I have like
I
15-year
know.
old females still laying eggs,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
they're
it's
healthy.
crazy.
Yeah.
They're really healthy. I told people that the second I got into geckos and we talk about dragons, I always tell them like, hey, be grateful, man. Cresteds are
Yeah.
so healthy compared to bearded dragons. It is. if you kill a crested, it's because you're doing something wrong. It's
Yeah,
rarely that something was wrong with the crested. If you're breeding them, egg binding and things like that can happen, but
yeah,
they're pretty resilient if you're following like the right care requirements, basically.
yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Damn, that's crazy. They hate clutches. So I did. So I wanted to ask you, Jordan. I mean, you have great quality stuff, so I'm sure you don't have, too much of a hard time selling your stuff. But the market has been in a little like weird, kind of like limbo state. I know
For
Palm
sure.
Street. Are you guys on Palm Street? I can't.
I haven't started yet.
No. Oh my God, you're crazy. Um, Anyways, Palm Street has helped out a lot of breeders that have been in that
Absolutely.
limbo. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel like the market is right now? Where do you see it going? Is it like just like anything else? I mean, like real estate's rough right now. Freaking
Yeah.
stocks are rough right now. So like, is it just one of those things we gotta wait out? Or what do you
I
think?
think it's also just a quality will sell kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to stand out and have something that other people don't. For the longest time, I wanted insane tricolors. I thought that was going to be like the one thing that was missing off my table. But once I got really nice tricolors, I realized that's what everyone else is selling, and they're really hard to move because of that.
Yeah.
So having things on your table, and I mean, in Morph Market and Palm Street that just other people don't have is going to be your best friend there.
Yeah.
I still move high end items like no issue. It just has to
Right.
be something that's nice. If you're putting a big
Yeah.
price tag now on something that's not nice, it's not like before. You can't
Yeah.
throw $1,000 on a mid tier female and expect it to go like that. It's just not going
Yeah.
to happen. But I
Yeah.
think the market's going to get better. I've noticed a lot of gecko people over the last couple of years kind of getting out and downsizing and this and that. And ultimately, that's just the amount of people breeding is slowly coming down, and the demand is going to stay right where it's at. So at a certain point, the market's going to kind of start swinging up, and the people who rode it out the longest are going to be the ones who do pretty well for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I've seen it happen time and time again. I've seen people, come to my table, buy 20 geckos, and then have a table at their next reptile show, and then another reptile show comes and they're getting off and they're not
Yep.
into it anymore. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. It's like anything else. There's ups and there's downs, and you got to ride it out. If you really, there's nothing wrong with being like a keeper or a hobbyist type breeder that just like, you know, collects a couple of geckos here and there. But if you're like somebody that's looking to do this for full time, or you're serious about this and you gotta like learn to ride those waves and be more conservative at this
You also
point.
have to breed with intention too. I see a lot of
Yeah.
people just stick geckos together, and it's like both the parents are nice. Let's see what comes out of it. I
Right.
think there has to be a little more intentional thought than that. Like your pairings need to be like either pattern focused or color focused or more focused. Like you need to have like a specific goal in mind that you're working towards, and make sure both animals equally contribute to that. If they don't, then don't breed them.
Yeah.
You're adding more cresteds out there. There's a million low quality cresteds. We don't need more of those. You can go to any
Exactly.
show in the country and find $40 cresteds on someone's table. And what's funny is, even though people are selling $40 cresteds, I'll go to shows where I have cresteds that are no cheaper than $300, and I will sell more quantity wise than the people selling them dirt cheap just because mine are nice and theirs aren't.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, people, there's this like kind of like way of thinking that you know the cheaper animal is always going to sell the most, but it's not necessarily true. I mean, they may sell the most, but it doesn't mean they're going to all be bought from you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like there's a
You also have
lot more of those people out there. So a $40 crescent gecko sells more than a $350 one, but
yeah.
the people that there's a million people with $40 crested geckos and a handful of people with 350, not 350, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean, like with
It
higher
also
quality
depends on
geckos.
your business model too. I mean, how you're structuring it. Are you trying to
Yeah.
mass produce wholesale, items so that you can throw them on the table? And your market's definitely bigger. The people with little 6-year-old kids that are getting into cresteds for the first time, those are the ones that they're going to go and flock to. And if that's your customer base that you're pushing, then that's perfectly fine. Just don't
Yeah.
be surprised, on one end or the other. For me, my goal
Right.
is I want to sell the nicest cresteds possible, And typically, my biggest clients are other breeders and people that want to breed cresteds because you're coming over to my table because you want the nicest thing that you can bring into your breeding program.
And oftentimes those are the best customers because they're not gonna harass you with a billion questions. They kind of got already know what to do, and
Yeah.
boom.
And even if they do, the thing is too is like when you purchase an animal for me, I don't mind being that resource. I love to help people in that regard. At the end of the day, like I forget what the saying is. It's like competition happens at the bottom, collaboration happens at the top.
All
Like
right.
as you start working with other breeders, you realize like we're not against each other. Like we're all on the same team here. You know, we all want to make
Yeah.
amazing cresteds and have the best color, the best structure, the best morphs. Like
Yeah.
you see
And
people kind of collaborate and hey, I'll loan you this animal because my male makes the most sense with your female. Let's freaking do it and see what comes out of it. And I think that type
yeah.
of stuff is awesome.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. I think that's one of the that's I seen there's a few like different cliques in our hobby, and I seen a couple of those cliques do that, like they collaborate or cliques maybe has like a negative connotation to it, but it's like people friends tend to stick
Yeah, like
together,
friend
and
groups.
they yeah, friend groups, and then they they kind of like collaborate and they produce some incredible animals. So
Yeah,
it's definitely a way to level up. And
for sure.
another thing that I wanted to mention is like a lot of people, like you said, they see it too much as like it is competition. Like, don't get me wrong, I see it as competition, but it's like a friendly competition. Like,
Yeah,
that's why I say, guys, chose just geckos. Like, it's it's fun to compete, but it's not like I hate you because you beat me on your gargoyle gecko is better than mine or whatever.
exactly.
It's like,
It's like
okay,
go home and
well,
make some nicer stuff and come back next time.
exactly. So a lot of time I've gotten this, a lot of people have asked or told me that the reasons they don't enter geckos into the competition was because like they feel, like they just don't want to, they're afraid to lose basically. Like they don't want to, enter a gecko because every other gecko is so much nicer. And my all I say to that is like, well, listen, it's you may think that gecko's nicer, but you never know what the judges are gonna think because like you said yourself, you didn't think Polaris was like all that crazy, but
Yeah,
when you judge it, little like scale by scale, basically, he actually is one of the best geckos there. So don't underestimate your geckos. Like have some confidence, believe in yourself,
yeah.
and
And put yourself out there too. You're not
put
gonna know if you
yourself
don't
out
try.
there. Exactly. Like, you put yourself out there. Now I get to put you here on this podcast or somebody else, and like more people know you, and your name starts to grow, your business starts to grow, and you get more
Absolutely.
notoriety for your animals, which is ultimately what we want to do as breeders.
Plus, the
Um,
trophies don't hurt.
yeah, yeah, when you have four, exactly. So Jordan, my last question, my last thing I wanted to ask you was what listen, you could be as honest as you want to be, and I promise you my feelings don't get hurt. What are
Okay,
your honest feelings on the Gold Standard Gecko Club, and how can we make it better?
that's a good question. Honest feelings, I absolutely love it. I think it's a great idea. From like the collaboration aspect and just getting the community to kind of all come together and put forth their best animals and get judged on them. I think that entire process is great. I'd say the biggest thing is just we need more people involved. You know,
Yeah.
it's fun winning for sure. It's a little less fun when your animal's the only animal in the category. I want to bring
Right.
Carnage against 10 other amazing gargoyles, you know, and I want to see how
Yeah.
he stands up against other people's collections. So I
Right.
think the biggest way we can improve is just getting more people actively involved.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's also what Tara said when I interviewed her, is literally like the same exact thing.
Okay.
And I agree. I think, they the Flora Fauna is a smaller show,
For sure.
but the next show we're gonna do, it's gonna be in Daytona Beach. It's a
Okay.
Florida show. It's our biggest Florida show. So I expect a lot more people to, join in that one. And that one's gonna be in August, I think 16th through 17th or something like that.
Okay.
But we're gonna be by the way, are you gonna be at are you gonna Vans? Are you gonna go to that show?
I don't think so. It's right at that. time slot where it's still a little too hot for me to ship out my animals on my side.
Oh,
I'd
right.
probably have to like drive to California and then ship them from there and fly out from there, and it
Oh,
might be a
yeah.
little bit more work than it's worth. But maybe we'll attend. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot you're a Arizona boy.
Yeah, it's like
So
116 out today.
I do not envy you,
Yeah,
man. So yeah, well, anyways, we are doing the next show at Daytona here in a couple months. So we're super excited about that. We're gonna start promoting that heavy so a lot of people get to
absolutely.
join. And I'm excited to see what turnout we get this year at Daytona.
Do you think you're
Yeah.
gonna do a West Coast show at all? Like a
Yeah, yeah, I
super
definitely
show?
want to. I definitely want to. I'm gonna be honest, it's not profitable at this point,
Yeah,
so I have to make it, you know,
makes sense for
at
you
least
guys
a little bit profitable for me to, because I just been pouring money into this,
for
and
sure.
we get sponsors and everything, and honestly, like if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't probably be doing a lot of this because it's just like the expenses, traveling. I have to take money, have to pay, like
Yeah, it all adds up
getting the banner, it all adds up, the car, the flights, and all these things.
for
So
sure.
the expenses are up there, but as it starts growing, I want to start expanding and moving it to California. I want to go to Tinley, I want to do
Yeah,
Texas, I want to do the
Tinley would
big
be a crazy one. You got to
big
do like
shows.
a West Coast one, an East Coast one, and then have Tinley be like the show off between the
Yeah, the
two.
West Coast versus the East Coast.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The little showdown.
yeah, we definitely will get there. I honestly want to do California next year, one of the super shows, but I want to get through this Daytona show. It's kind of like in my backyard,
Okay.
so I feel like I'm gonna be a little bit more comfortable with that.
Yeah, it'll be
And
easier for you to put on for sure.
yeah, and it's not as expensive, right? So, because I'm already gonna be at Daytona for TikisGeckos and stuff,
Exactly.
so it's gonna be fun. But yeah, Jordan, thanks, man. I love to get on here and pick your brain and talk to a bunch of different breeders because everybody does
Absolutely.
things a little bit differently. You have, your strengths. You have your killer gargoyles and cappuccinos and red geckos and all that. And I feel like what makes this hobby so awesome is like all the different flavors of geckos that you get. So
Exactly.
I always love to put different breeders on the spot like this. And yeah, man, let them know. I mean, Ruby Reptiles, of course, but let them know
That's
where
me.
where they can find you. Instagram. What
Um,
else?
Ruby Reptiles on pretty much everything: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. We're gonna at some point start getting more active on YouTube and TikTok. That's something we're
I was
working towards.
I was about to say I don't know if I've seen any of your YouTube
And
videos.
I've posted just shorts more than anything, like the little
Gotcha,
TikTok videos. I'll upload some there every once in a while. But yeah, at some
gotcha.
point we're gonna start doing some like unboxing videos when we get stuff, and I don't know, random cool
Yeah.
videos. But yeah, thank you for having us on. It was great to be here.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoyed that. Again, one last time, make sure you check out the sponsors: Zoomed, Pangea, PalmStreet, and the biggest and best sponsor of them all, TikisGeckos.
That's
Because
right.
without them, none of this shit would be possible.
For sure.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys on the
All
next
right,
one.
man.
Peace.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.